Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we're doing a Buy This, Not That eyeshadow palette edition. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This is another video as part of Eyeshadow Palette Week, but the Buy This, Not That kind of video I tend to do every month. So if this is a video concept that you like, then stay tuned because I like to come back to this type of content, every once in a while. I still have a giveaway going on as well, so if you haven't entered yet, make sure that you enter below. I'll make sure to link the video where you can enter the giveaway so that you know all about what you can win and what you need to do in order to be eligible for winning that prize. And then today I wanted to come on here to sort of give you my top tips that go into selecting eyeshadow palettes for me. So what do I rate highly, the Buy This, and what do I rate not so highly when it comes to purchasing a new eyeshadow palette. And hopefully that way I can also protect you a little bit from making bad decisions. And I definitely think that that goes into it. I normally start these videos with the not that video part of the video, but I thought that we could start this one with the Buy This type of stuff, because I think if you know what I like and what I look for in a palette, that makes more sense as well into the pile of the things that I'm not going to be recommending for you. So I have a couple of palettes here to show you. These are just examples of what I mean. I don't mean this exact eyeshadow palette, because the way I've sort of conceptualized this video for myself is that my top 5, bottom 5 ranking here isn't about the palette itself, but what it has to offer me as part of my eyeshadow palette collection. And these tend to be the things that I look for when it comes to making a new eyeshadow palette purchase. So I thought that that could perhaps be helpful in some way. And we're gonna start with a concept that is very important to me, and that is everyday, super easy to wear makeup. I'm a teacher in my day-to-day life. Content creation is not my full-time job. And so while I love the looks that very creative people do, and it's like these cut creases and all that, I A, don't have the time, and B, it doesn't fit my lifestyle. So I look for eyeshadow palettes that fit with my lifestyle, and for me, that's always going to be a good neutral palette. Case in point, the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette. This is a really, really beautiful eyeshadow palette with foolproof formula and really beautiful shimmers in here as well. So it just has a lot to offer, and this is just so great for every day. It can be something you can use to intensify a look if you want to go for something a little bit more glam, but you can also very easily use this palette to just do a very basic look that's going to make you feel like $1,000,000, and it's going to work really well in the type of professional environments that I personally navigate the most, you could say. So that's why when I say everyday, your everyday can look different, but a good eyeshadow palette that you can whip out whenever you want, and it's just going to work for you every single time. A color story like this is excellent for me. Decide for yourself what that kind of color story is going to be and what kind of money you're willing to spend on it. This was limited edition, it's no longer available, but I'm really happy that I was able to get my hands on it. I paid a pretty penny for it because I had to get this one from the official Makeup by Mario website before it was discontinued, and because they're located in the US, I was hit with massive shipping and handling fees. So I paid almost twice as much for this palette than the original retail price because of it. But to me, it was well worth it, and it's something I really enjoy. I also used this eyeshadow palette on my neighbor when I did her makeup for her wedding last year. So this is a very sort of really good foolproof eyeshadow palette that just sees me through so many things. But I have plenty of these in my makeup collection. If you know anything about my makeup collection, then you know that these kind of eyeshadow palettes, it's where it's at for me. So I have several, but this is just one example of an easy to grab for everyday eyeshadow palette that I love. Now, some of you may be surprised that I didn't pick one of my Natasha Denona palettes, because I also think of those as being great for everyday. But I wanted to showcase Natasha Denona, and this happens to be the I Need a Warm, but you can pick any of her palettes, I feel. Well, maybe not all of them, but most of her eyeshadow palettes always have a little bit of oomph. So when it comes to formula, I think the Natasha Denona formula is one of my top favorites. I did a video all about my top favorite eyeshadow formulas a couple of videos ago, so go back in the month if you want to hear all about what eyeshadow formulas I love. But Natasha Denona is definitely up there. And one of the things I appreciate about the Natasha Denona palettes is that it has really beautiful mattes, but also some really amazing shimmers in different levels of texture. And that's one of the reasons why I keep reaching for them, why I keep buying them, even though this one I didn't buy with my own money. This was very kindly gifted to me by a friend because she knew that I wanted to buy this palette and she had an extra one. And she's like, do you want the extra one? I was like, I might as well try it. So yes, this is warm tone. This is a bit out of my comfort zone compared to what I normally go for, but it has, can you see that in the mirror here, that this has a beautiful green shift? So there is a multi-chrome in here. There are different levels of shimmer. Some things are a little bit more sparkly than others. Like some of it is a bit more satin. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the Natasha Denona formula, is that I really get everything I want to create the interest I need, even if the color story is perhaps a little bit meh. Natasha Denona color stories aren't the most exciting, but I definitely find from a texture point of view to find her eyeshadow palettes to be just one of the best out there. So find something that's great for every day, but also find something with interesting textures so you have a couple of options to play around with. And for instance, if you were to combine these two, you get indefinite amount of looks that are going to work for you really well. Speaking of color stories, find something in a color story that you love. So we all know I love cool tones, but to keep this video a little bit more interesting, I didn't just want to go for a cool tone neutral because we know I like that, but those can be an everyday palette for me as well. So I went with my favorite blue, green, purple palette. If there is a type of color story that I enjoy the most, that I have the most in my eyeshadow palette collection, it's blue, green, purple. Why? They are cool tones, they are colorful, and they again give you a lot of options. So that's why I selected the Cosmic Beauty Winter Wonderland here, but this again could be anything. Pick a palette to have in your collection in a color story that you love. It doesn't have to be this one, it doesn't have to be blue, green, purple, but if you love, I don't know, an all purple palette, you go for that. Or if you want something with really grungy tones and you want like swampy greens, go for that. So depending on what you like, go for something that you're just going to be able to play around with. And again, that can be complementary perhaps to some of the more neutral things you have already picked, so that you have a nice mixture of things. Even though that palette could have been a cool tone neutral, my next pick definitely couldn't have been. I do think you need a good colorful palette in your collection. But decide for yourself what level of colorful do you want. This doesn't have to be the level of colorful that everybody feels comfortable with wearing. I'm almost dropping things here. So if that's you, if you want something that's still colorful but a bit more muted, then something like the Poison Garden by Bella Beauté Bar has been one of my particular favorites in the past year. You get these berry tones, you get some blue tones, you get neutrals, you get some warm tones in here. It just has a lot to offer, but it's all very muted. It's all very muted and a little bit grungy. So that's why I'm showcasing this one. I'm personally, like, if I go bright and colorful, it's going to be a blue, green, or a purple, like in the Winter Wonderland. But besides that, I struggle wearing really bright colors on my eyes and on my skin tone. I love it in my clothing, so very often my clothing is already quite colorful and out there, so I tend to keep my makeup a little bit more muted down so that it just goes together a little bit better. So that's why Poison Garden is the level of colorful that I would want to recommend to you, but of course you decide what colorful means to you. Is that going to be a monochromatic palette? Is that something super sparkly? Maybe you want to go for like an all shimmer palette like Gloss Gods does, or maybe you want to go full on rainbow. Decide for yourself what colorful means to you and pick that one. Finally, the thing that I think is a must-have in your makeup collection is, again, not this palette in particular, but what it represents, and that's a cheap, affordable eyeshadow palette that you don't mind racking. This can live in your makeup bag, it can be used on the go, you can use it for travel. It's small, it's slim, it's easy to use, it still gives you a really pretty look, but you don't mind if this is going to be wrecked. Like if I were to wreck this or my Makeup by Mario, I would be in tears, especially because the Makeup by Mario is no longer available, and that was a pricey palette. But this really cheap and cheerful Catrice thing that was €5 at the drugstore, I don't mind it all that much. It's why I also, when I travel, I very often use cream shadows that I can use with fingers, and I need very few tools. But if you want to bring a palette, this is something I've done for years. Whenever I travel, I make sure I have a color story I like in a palette that is slim, easy to package, but I don't mind if it ends up just coming to me in like all shattered and like heaps of powdered shadow, because I would not mind if this ever like leaves my collection. I really wouldn't be too sad about it. This wasn't an expensive palette. I don't mind breaking it. I don't mind wrecking it. But I just think it's good to have something like that, especially if you live your life a lot on the go. I know some people do. I don't tend to live my life on the go, but it's good to have something where you can just chuck it into a makeup bag, take it with you to wherever you're staying the night, and you don't have to worry about it being your most precious eyeshadow palette. I really feel it's a good idea to have one thing in your makeup collection that can have that function. So to sum up, the top 5 sort of recommendations of what I think you should have, the buy this category, is something great for every day, something that you love the formula of, something that you love the color story of, something that is colorful, and something that's great for travel. That's to sum up my top 5. But what do I think you need to steer away from? What are the traps that I don't want you to fall for? This is them. Anything limited edition. I know, I'm a bit of a magpie myself as well. Very often limited edition means pretty packaging, and it means so many things. But if something is limited edition and it's only around, especially this one, this was a Christmas release, it sold out super quickly and it was gone within a couple of weeks and it never came back. It's the Dior Silver Essentials. I haven't seen it come back ever since. This is a really beautiful palette. I'm really happy to have it in my life, but seeking out limited edition collections just because it is limited, it's very enticing, but it's a way by like orchestrated by brands to get you to buy more and maybe spend money you don't have. I'm a very firm believer in budgeting for your makeup and using the money you have to make those purchases and not trying to like go into debt just to buy the new thing. And I definitely think that limited edition collections are almost designed to push you, especially in the holiday season when you're already spending money on presents for other people and you're out shopping a little bit more than you usually do. It's very, very tempting to spend a bit more and get that really beautiful eyeshadow palette that you may have been lusting after. But limited edition, it's a ploy. It's not always going to be better quality. It's never going to be perhaps the thing you were looking for. I definitely feel that when it comes to limited edition, I'm trying to really stay away from it. There was a period of time as well where I was trying to chase these things, and there are definitely limited edition eyeshadow palettes in my house. They're no longer part of my collection that I traveled the world for, you could say, in order to get my hands on it, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, that's something that you then do, and that's not something that I feel is absolutely necessary. So stay away from limited edition collections. A similar thing I wanted to point out here is the second thing that I think you shouldn't buy, and that's collaborations with makeup creators or things that just look really appealing. And I'm holding up an Oden's Eye palette. This happens to be the only collab palette in my entire makeup collection as far as I know. No, that's not true. That's not true. I actually have several. I think there's another one coming up in a second, but I do support Angelica. I watch a lot of her videos still till this day. I think she did a really, really good job with Oden's Eye on this first collection that she did. And Oden's Eye is one of the brands that always does beautiful looking color stories. But from what I have tried from the brand, I don't really love the formula all that much. And I very often, in usage, don't enjoy the color story as much as my eyes enjoy looking at something like this. The reason why I'm saying that you should be careful with buying from creators is, A, there has been a lot of shady things happening in the past with makeup creators who got their own collections. Either the makeup creator itself became problematic over time, or the brand became problematic, or there were just... There's always a lot of issues there, I feel. I feel like Odin's Eye is a brand that does some really solid releases with creators. But like I said, I've been watching Angelica for years, and this color story appealed to me. But a lot of the times, the creators I watch do collaborations that don't look like something I would wear. And that's why I'm like, I'm going to stay away from those things. Do I love Alice Atlantis as a creator? Yes, I watch their videos on TikTok from time to time, and they do some amazing looks. Would I want to support that creator? For sure, of course. But then I look at the Blend Bunny release that came out this summer, and I look at those palettes, and I'm like, that's not for me. Does it go with Alice Atlantis? Yes. Does it go with me and my life and what I need to go for? No. So that's always something that I factor in, and that's why I was holding up the Odin's Eye. Again, love this color story when I look at it, but there's always something missing. So that's why I have stopped buying Odin's Eye altogether, and also why I'm very careful with buying collabs that creators do. If it's not something that I can see myself wearing, even if I love the creator with all of my being, I will not be buying their makeup releases. I'm just not. Something you don't need. Now, I said get something colorful. For some people, that might mean a rainbow palette, but let me de-influence you from thinking that a colorful palette has to be a rainbow palette. It really doesn't have to be. You can pick something monochromatic, you can pick something that's a bit more grungy, a bit more muted. A bright primary color rainbow palette looks beautiful in the pan. It's super aesthetic to look at. This happens to be the Slush from September Rose Cosmetics. This is no longer a brand. They have been, they were discontinued a couple of years ago, but this is the only rainbow palette I've ever had in my possession that I've been able to make work on my fair skin. You get purples, you get blues, you get these greens with yellows, you get oranges, and you get these pinky, sort of purpley reds, you could say. This is really pretty. It has some neon shades in, like this orange, for instance, is one of my favorites actually in the palette. I just find that rainbow palettes are incredibly limiting. You might think, oh, I'm getting a full rainbow of colors, so that's going to give me loads of options. Whereas I feel it's easier for me to create looks with something like the Winter Wonderland or the Poison Garden I showed you in my top 5 than something like this. With this, everything turns into a sunset eye. If that's not you, or if you're someone who just picks like one of the columns, then I'm sure you're fine. But I want more versatility out of the eyeshadow palettes I have in my collection, which is why this is the only rainbow palette that I've kept around, because it was like, if I have one, I have the option, but I don't need a million other rainbow palettes that are going to see me through. I have this, and it makes me happy, and that's all I need, really. There are a lot of rainbow palettes that have been released over time. I think it can be really helpful depending on what kind of makeup you like to do, but I wouldn't say it's a must-have per se. I think if you have some really good colorful shades in another palette, you can still do really bright, colorful looks, but it doesn't have to be a rainbow palette just for it to be a colorful color story, you could say. Something you also don't need in your life, things that are just expensive. And actually, the two brands I'm showing you here at the end could both fall into this category. But I think Pat McGrath is known for doing quite expensive makeup products. These Mothership palettes retail for, they started off costing $120, but due to inflation, I think they're now $140, which is just, it's insane if you think about it, that this little thing was like 135 euros. This is also therefore the last one I bought because I love the Pat McGrath formula. Don't get me wrong. I love this. The color stories are just incredibly samey. It wasn't as exciting as when the brand first launched. And my favorite is still the first one I ever bought. So I didn't really feel I needed it. But just know that just because something is expensive doesn't mean it's going to be better quality per se. With eyeshadows, I do think that spending a little bit more can mean you get better quality product. Like the €5 Catrice thing is beautiful. It's a wonderful palette, but I definitely get something differently when I use the Makeup by Mario one. but it doesn't, like, good makeup doesn't have to be expensive. I used to think that when I first got into makeup, that good makeup had to be expensive for it to be good. I had never really been successful at using drugstore makeup all that much. So when I first got into makeup, my entire collection was like Chanel, Dior, YSL, Givenchy, those kind of like legacy brands, you could say. Because it was easy for me to buy, because there was a shop not too far from my home that sold those types of product, and drugstore makeup has come a very long way. But don't assume that just because something is over 70 euros that is by default going to be a better product. And this doesn't just go for eyeshadow palettes, it goes for all makeup. Because very often what you're paying for is packaging, marketing, and the name, and you're not paying for the quality of the product when things become more expensive. I definitely feel that sort of the threshold for when makeup is still good, but it becomes too expensive is sort of around the 50 to 60 euro mark. That's where I feel that the difference in quality becomes less noticeable, and it's much more about name, branding, what the packaging looks like, rather than it actually being quality. That being said, though, there are indie brands that retail for higher, like have a higher price point than 60 euros or so. But also there, I find that the quality doesn't necessarily transfer to what the product actually has to offer. Some of my favorite indie brands fall within the 40 to 60 euro range, depending on how big the palette is. Sometimes if they're doing bigger palettes, the palettes become more expensive. And that's one of the things I don't like. Like some brands will do like 25 pans or 30 pans in an eyeshadow palette, and therefore it is super expensive because they give you lots of product, because those pans are usually like, what, 2 grams or whatever. I don't need that much eyeshadow. I have 200 eyeshadow palettes in my makeup collection. I don't need really big eyeshadow palettes to get what I want. So if that's the reason why the palette is more expensive, I wish the brand would cut it down to like a 9 or a 12 pan. 12 to like 9 to 15 pans is like sort of where my sweet spot is when it comes to an eyeshadow palette. But when they become bigger than that, I very often feel there are shades in the palette that I wouldn't necessarily use again or anything like that. So for me, 9 to 15 is sort of like what I like best. And if a brand can do a really good color story within 9 to 15 pans and it's under 60 euros, then I'm going to be happier with that palette than a 30 pan eyeshadow palette that was close to 100 that has a very similar formula, because the formula really doesn't change that much. And finally, I'm all for giving brands a second chance and to see how much you like things after a while, but don't buy eyeshadow that you know is not gonna work for you. Case in point. This is the Amy Loves palette. I could have held up the emo palette as well, but yeah, Adept, and like, it's just not my favorite formula. I know a lot of people love them, but what I dislike about some of their palettes is that I don't get the mattes I want to go with the shimmers that are inside it. And I feel that this is actually a palette that is the best sort of example of what I mean with that. Like, I get a blue here. These two are too similar. Like on my eyes, they look the same. So I only have this for a crease shade, and then maybe this as liner. That's pretty much it. I'm just not really getting the options I want in terms of what I want from a matte. And then in this palette, it looks really wonderful and cool toned when you look at it, but it's mainly because of the silvery background, because this has a gold flash, this has a gold flash. Like, everything in here ends up looking gold on me. And that was surely not the intention that Amy had with the palette. But that's one of the reasons why Adept is always a little bit difficult for me to recommend. They are one of those brands that is more up there in price. I mean, a lot of their palettes are just under 100 euros. You get cheap, flimsy packaging that's just cardboard that is magnetized. That is what every single indie brand does. So I know that the price isn't going to the packaging itself like you do with some more luxury brands, like a Pat McGrath. Like, a lot of this price point is the packaging, the beveled mirror, the way the shadows are laid out. Like, a lot of it goes into that. So a lot of this is supposed to go into this product. But what if I told you that Adept and Ensley Rain are the two brands that crease the worst on my eyelids? Even if I do take every level of precaution to prevent creasing. I double prime my lids. I don't just go in with one eyeshadow primer. I use two, because these puppies have a tendency to crease. I don't have any issues with creasing with any of my other eyeshadows. And I've tested out almost 1,000 eyeshadow palettes in my lifetime. Okay? That's a lot. And the only ones that are consistently creasing on me is those two brands. And I'm like, So again, I tried it this year. I like the emo palette well enough. Part of me still wants the revamped Minka because I used to have the original Minka palette, but that expired on me. That expired on me. And I know that this is also true for some legacy brands. I know Tom Ford lipsticks. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but those used to expire within like 6 months or something crazy like that. If I pay close to 100 euros for a palette, I don't want it to expire within the time frame that it says on the back. I want that palette to last me a good 5 to 6 years so I can get as much use out of it as possible. So yes, the formulas look really stunning. It looks great in a swatch. It looks great when it first goes on. But if things crease on me and if things expire on me really quickly, I know that's not where I need to put my money. And I should just learn my lesson. So I'm sort of like waiting how long the more like recent purchases I've made from Adept, when those are going to expire and when that's going to change formulas. Because I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to be something that I still like. So also check your makeup and smell it from time to time, because that's what happened to the Minka. It started to smell like turpentine over time. Like it was this really strong smell and it started to like feel like the texture was no longer the same. And that's why I'm sort of like very scared for some of the formulas we get from indie brands nowadays, because they're super emollient and they look stunning when you first buy them. But how long are those things going to last? Because they kind of apply like a cream, but there is no packaging to protect them from bacteria like most like cream blushes or something would have. And those we already know expire more quickly than a powder blush does. So I'm very sort of like fingers crossed. So that is again something I think you need to take into consideration. So not only price point, but also think of like, what are you willing to work with? What do you want from a shadow? I love the look of these super emollient, really nice shimmering, flaky things. I really, really do. They are beautiful. But if it doesn't last until lunch on my eyelids and the palette expires within 2 years, I'm not going to put my money towards that. So to round up the sort of bottom 5, I would say stay away from limited edition. Stay away from collabs and don't try to get sucked in by a color story just because it looks pretty. It needs to work once it goes onto your face. Stay away from plain, straight up rainbow palettes if that's not your vibe. If you don't think you're going to be using every single shade in it, it's not going to be worth it. You're better off getting a different color story that is colorful. Stay away from palettes that are expensive and don't just buy them because they are expensive and you expect them to be better than other things, because that's definitely not the case. And stay away from formulas that you know you're not going to like. Take that lesson from me, because I should really learn my own lesson there. But then again, I do have this channel. I do want to test things out for you. And sometimes that means that I will buy something to see whether I now like the brand differently or not. So yes, I definitely sometimes take one for the team and make a purchase or get something sent to me in PR that isn't necessarily what I want, but it still can be good content sometimes. So that's definitely there. But if you're just shopping for your own makeup collection, then these would be my rules of thumb, you could say, to take into account when you're making your next eyeshadow palette purchase. So I hope this video was helpful. Please thumbs it up in the, below the video if you want to, because that can help out the channel. Remember, there is still a giveaway going on till the end of the month, so stay tuned. And then I really hope you enjoyed watching this one. Stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you again in my next one. Bye.